everybody. Welcome to another episode of Jimmy Wolf Talks. We've got Jeff Dumbrack, and today we're going to look at two incredibly important albums from the 1980s. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the U.S.A. versus Van Halen's 1984. Probably two perfect records. They defined the decade. They also were extremely important albums for both artists because they made them both relevant in the 1980s since they were both 70s bands. And they were also huge, I would say, comeback records from the albums that came before. Because Van Halen's Diver Down was a little lackluster. And
dare I say...
I will give it this, though. It was a fun record. It's not very serious, but it's like candy. I mean, it is fun.
Dancing in the Street is one of my favorite cover versions of all time, and they did it on that album. So
yeah, and there's a lot of like interludes of Eddie doing some fun guitar things, and but yeah, I mean, it's not a classic. Let's put it that way. It's usually ranked at the bottom of most Roth era Van Halen lists. And
I'd have to agree with that statement, Jimmy.
And then Bruce Springsteen had a record called Nebraska, which was mostly acoustic songs, which was a great album as well. But, you know, it doesn't feel like an actual record. So
is it The River, Jimmy?
No, The River came earlier in 1980.
Yeah, no, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is it The River?
No. The River is amazing.
Is it Born to Run, Jimmy? I don't think so.
Nope, it's not. All right, it's not. So.
Is there darkness on the edge of town?
No. So yeah, you know, quite. I mean, both rock and roll records, but kind of, I guess, different sides of the rock and roll coin. Maybe Van Halen's a lot more musical and technical, and Bruce is a lot more sort of songwritery, kind of more Americana. Versus like fun party.
Bruce has got a jingle and jangle going on, and well, obviously Van Halen has Eddie Van Halen. So
yeah. Or maybe this is the way to put it. Bruce Springsteen is it's kind of like a love letter to the working man of America, and 1984 is the party album that the working man of America puts on. Maybe
that's true. So. Bruce Springsteen made a homage to, me and my brethren. And then Van Halen made the album that we put on after work.
So there you go. So it's all connected. Yeah.
It is. It comes full circle, really.
It does. Okay, so like every other show that we do, we're just going to pick our favorite of these two. So why don't we start with you, Jeff? What's your top pick of these two records?
Well, Jimmy, like you said, very difficult choice here. You're on opposite ends of the spectrum. You got your hard rock and Van Halen. Rarely have they come harder, I think. They got riffs that punch you in the face all throughout the album. It's damn near perfect.
Yeah.
I say damn near because, Van Halen 1 was perfect. I don't really think 1984 is perfect. Like all the singles are phenomenal. Drop Dead Legs is phenomenal. Top Jimmy's pretty good. But, for one, it's short, I find. Like, it's 9 songs, and then 1984, the keyboard intro. I could have done without that, personally, which only makes it 8 songs. And Born in the U.S.A. is longer. However... this is Van Halen's biggest album. It also has their biggest hits, their monster hits. So Jump and Panama and Hot for Teacher, for sure those are the 3 biggest hits. You could argue that maybe Running with the Devil or Jamie's Crying would be comparable, but I would really think you'd have to say that really those 3 are the big ones. I'll Wait, even though I personally love it, is not a song that I think most Van Halen fans love. I think maybe it's a little too keyboard heavy. I personally think it's amongst my favorite Van Halen songs personally.
Yeah.
However, I do have to say that my overall sentiment for that album is it's short. And it's short when I listen to it. And I know they worked on it for a long time. There was a lot of tension. David Lee Roth at the keyboards. Eddie Van Halen told him where to go. Alex Van Halen backed his brother up. Michael Anthony just kind of sat in the background. But I gotta say, I'm gonna side with Bruce on this one.
Wow. Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So I think you may feel differently than me about this, but I don't play very well. I mean, I play guitar very poorly. And because of that, I mean, I can recognize the skill of Eddie Van Halen. Like it's awesome to me. But the one thing that really resonates with me is Bruce Springsteen's songwriting, and really, if those are the two big things on both those albums. You have Bruce's songwriting and Eddie's playing. And I mean, to a lesser degree, all the other guys in Van Halen play well too. And you have some fun songs, some fun lyrics, and David Lee Roth is a better singer than Bruce Springsteen. But Bruce he just speaks to the working man, and he's talking about me on this record. He's talking about me and my struggles. I very much identify with Bruce Springsteen as a man and a songwriter. I don't really identify with Van Halen at all. They're like Martians. They're David Lee Roth is such a huge personality and just a naturally gifted vocalist. Eddie Van Halen is a guitar virtuoso, and Alex Van Halen is a tremendous drummer. They're all superstars to me. But Bruce is a superstar, but just he's a regular dude. And I guess it doesn't really hurt that I'm reading his biography right now, but I really feel a sense of, I really identify with Bruce Springsteen as a person, and at least from what he's trying to convey from reading his book and in his music and in his songwriting specifically. And what I appreciate most about him is he puts the song first. He doesn't take any shorts when it comes to. A lot of the time, I find the instrumentation is pulled back and the song is front and center. The vocal, Born in the U.S.A. specifically, fantastic vocal performance from Bruce. Like his voice is rough and ragged, and it's like the frustrated man that he's talking about in the song is actually doing the singing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a misunderstood song, but I gotta say, I really, I also love the fact that there's not really a guitar solo in there. It's like it's keyboard and drums and Bruce.
Yeah.
I really like Downbound Train.
Yeah.
I like Bobby Jean. Talking about a forlorn love that is come and gone. Glory Days is fun. Dancing in the Dark was his biggest probably video hit. I kind of when I listened to the song at first, I kind of got the impression that this is just another one of Bruce's songs where he's talking about the working man and being frustrated working the night shift at the Ford dealership or whatever. But it's actually not. It's about him and and the incessant touring and just the doldrums of everyday life, and the fact that I really understand that there's the dichotomy between the two is actually the similarity. Bruce is a big, huge superstar, but it's the same grind. And, although there's a huge cathartic release when he's on stage, then you go home, you got to decompress. You're sitting in the hotel room, you sit around getting older. Nobody gives a shit if you're whining a broken heart. The lyrics just really hit home for me. phenomenal writing on the entire album. And to be honest, that's what really knocks it up a notch for me. 1984 was the first cassette that I actually got when I was a boy that was mine. It wasn't my dad's. It wasn't something for my brother and me to listen to. It was mine. So I have a special affinity for that album. Also interesting, two of the most iconic album covers of all time. In this regard, I'm going to side with Van Halen, though. The angel smoking the cigarette, the little boy, incredible. But again, Bruce with the red, white, and blue, and Bruce's ass with the baseball hat in the back pocket, and I just identify with him as the average man. Certainly, Van Halen weren't trying to. Van Halen were superstars, and although Eddie Van Halen was a fairly humble man, their music was bigger than life, and Bruce wanted to make songs about the life that would have been his if he wasn't a big rock superstar, but he still approached rock and roll with the same type of drive and ambition that the regular working Joe has. This is the struggle. You've got one chance. Don't fuck it up. Respect your fans. Keep it together. Give them a good show. All of these things, this work ethic is something that I really identify with Bruce Springsteen. And he was born in the U.S.A.
All right.
Top album of '84, as far as I'm concerned. What say you, Jimmy?
Good breakdown, Jeff. Good breakdown. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I'll go in the same order. So yeah. So 1984, same thing. I had this album my entire life. My parents had it in their record collection. I remember first hearing it. I agree. It felt a little alien to me. It's uniquely has this very kind of technical sound to it, which the previous 5 Van Halen albums don't have. If you listen to the previous 5 Van Halen albums, they sound very live. Like the band is recording in the same room. They're doing one take of each song. 1984 sounds very, very clinical and a little mechanical. And I remember when I heard that as a kid, I was a little confused by that. The drum sound is very kind of electronic sounding, but not really. It's kind of weird. It really has its own sound to it. It was also recorded in Van Halen's new studio that he just built called 5150 with Don Landy. So I don't know how involved Ted Templeman was, but this was definitely the band had a pretty hands-on approach because it was at Eddie's house, right? But so that was my first impression. I was a little confused by the way it sounded. But yeah, I mean the hits are just iconic. I mean, Jump. Maybe I don't need to really hear it again. I'm a little sick of it, to be honest, but I mean, it's an incredible song. Just an anthem. Panama is a lot of fun. Top Jimmy is fun. Drop Dead Legs is probably one of their most underrated tunes. That has some killer guitar riffs in it. Killer. Now, side 2, I find is a little bit more unusual. It's kind of almost like jazzy and fusiony. Hot for Teacher has a lot of really complicated things going on in it.
The drum track, especially in Hot for Teacher, with the
yeah, it's like a weird mechanical drum line, but it's really cool. I'll Wait. I don't mind it. Don't love it. Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain. I love those 2 songs. Very progressive sounding as well. Kind of like Hot for Teacher, has a very kind of fusiony sound to it. I'm not sure if Van Halen was, or Eddie was probably inspired by Alan Holdsworth at that time. So, but yeah, I mean, but this album is it's just part of who I am. So I will always love it. It's not my favorite Van Halen album. I prefer the first 3, or the first 4 Van Halen albums. But to be fair. Fair warning.
Let's be honest.
Fair warning has its issues, but the first 4 Van Halen albums it has that spirit of what made the band great. And this album, I find is missing a little bit of that, but it's still incredible. And yeah, I mean, it basically, if the first Van Halen album put them on the map, this one like cemented them on the map. Like they weren't going to move. Like they've just become part of our culture, really, part of our musical rock and roll culture. So this was a very important album for them, and it also transitioned them into the '70s, or sorry, into the '80s very nicely. They were now relevant in the '80s. Like I'm not sure. I mean, if you listen to Fair Warning and Diver Down, I don't know how relevant those records are trend wise, but this one certainly, with the synthy riff and jump, they were definitely ready for the '80s and ready to be a huge commercial band in that decade. Okay, Born in the USA. This is also not my favorite Bruce Springsteen album. I like Darkness on the Edge of Town the best. But it certainly is a fantastic record, though. And it really did the same thing that the Van Halen album did. It brought Bruce into the '80s really nicely. Like he's got the sounds, he's got the look, right? He fits
the
right in.
video.
He's got the videos. He's got everything that, but he managed to stay himself, which is amazing. So like and Van Halen as well, right? Right. Both artists are able to be relevant in the '80s without selling out. I mean, Bruce is just doing what he does, but he's doing it extremely well, and he's very popular doing it, which I think is amazing. So he's still maintaining who he is. There's not a bad song on this record. I like them all. It just, I don't know. I feel like any one of these Bruce Springsteen songs would be so much fun to play. Like they're not hard. Like they aren't hard to play. They're pretty repetitive riffs. They just sound like they'd be a lot of fun to cover. I'm sure Bruce and his band had a lot of fun performing these songs. And yeah, I agree with you. Like Bruce is just, his songs are just so heartfelt and honest and authentic, and there's no bullshit. It just sounds like he's just talking about his life and about and whether it's about him or if it's if symbolic of other people in America who were born in the USA. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I think I'm actually gonna agree with you, Jeff. I'm gonna go Born in the USA. I think is the better record. I think that's
so funny enough, Jimmy. Since I'm reading that Bruce Springsteen bio, he said half of Born in the USA was written at the same time that Nebraska was written. So
okay.
He was thinking that Nebraska was going to either be a double album or have side one be acoustic and side two be electric, like the Born in the USA stuff.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But then he decided that that's not, like the feel wasn't right. So the Born in the USA stuff was held over. But it was, he actually, he was like in Middle America, somewhere at a gas station in like say 1981. And he needed something to read, so he just went to the bookshelf of the gas station and found a book, Born on the 4th of July, read it, and it was about this Vietnam vet who like came back disenfranchised. This guy was extremely patriotic, but like, very served his country, came back, and America wanted nothing to do with him, no help for him. And anyway, it resonated with Bruce, even though ironically Bruce was a draft dodger. But anyway, so he got into contact with the author, and the author took him down to one of the vet, the places where the vets hang out. And he saw that this wasn't an isolated incident, because the guys that he knew he had friends that died in Vietnam, but he also didn't see anybody that came back from Vietnam all fucked up, because like he dodged the draft and his career kind of started to take off, and he was busy, playing, and he was really committed to the rock and roll lifestyle. So he never really saw how much that really affected those people. and it just really affected him. So um, I really appreciate. Um, I appreciate the sentiment of Born in the USA. And Bruce also puts his money where his mouth is. Like he's never been overly political, or and doesn't like to talk about all the things he does for charity. But he did a concert for. They actually established like a veteran center that was strictly for Vietnam vets, because kind of the old school vets from World War II and the Korean War, they really didn't understand. There was a stigma coming from Vietnam where like a lot of people came back with drug habits. A lot of people came back and they were fucked up. Whereas I'm not saying people didn't get hurt in World War II and the Korean War, but like the drugs certainly weren't an issue. And like a lot of the chemical warfare, none of that really happened in those wars. So those vets really didn't have a good understanding of. They thought, well, these guys they're kind of pussies. They're just, they need to suck it up, and they need to, they need to get on with their lives. And a lot of these guys had like hardcore PTSD. Anyways, Bruce was instrumental in providing funding for a lot of these, for this organization, which I thought was quite a nice idea. And Bruce has been in the biography too. He talks about how when I think it was Darkness on the Edge of Town, he spent a small fortune. Like, he had the album recorded, but like the mixing part, he couldn't get it right. He spent months and months and months in trying to get it right. But at this point, with once Born in the USA came out, he'd had Hungry Heart, I think, was on the river. So he actually had a hit. He'd paid off all his debts. He was finally making some good money, and he could put his money, you know what I mean? He could put his money where he wanted it to. And, he's just, he's an honest, hardworking fellow who there's, how you describe Don Henley as like an elder statesman of rock who just has an authenticity to him that is like the things he's telling you, you need to wise up to. That's what I feel about Bruce Springsteen. Like he has lived a life, and the things that he has to say are things that are important for people to, like there's wisdom on these tracks that you need to, and they're there. All you got to do is pick up the album and listen to it. And there's on Born in the USA, there's a bit of wisdom, and there's a bit of nostalgia, and there's a bit of like looking back and wondering what if, and I guess now I'm at an age too where I'm looking back and wondering, I am fairly nostalgic. Christ, all we do is talk about nostalgia with old albums. So,
well, it's like, like music, right? It's like wine. It just gets better with age.
Well, good music does, right?
Yes. Well, yes. And the bad music just kind of goes away. But
Pitbull never gets better. It stays shitty.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a problem with looking at past records too, because there was a ton of really bad records that came out in the 70s and 80s as well, right? But all we do is look back at the best records from those decades, and
we could also have a show where you talk about, hey, let's review this shitty album and why it's so shitty. We're gonna say, wow, this Pussycat album was really shitty, and let's compare it to this Crazy Town album, which was really shitty. What's shittier about each? Which one's really shittier?
Yeah, album war of what's worse. Yeah.
Right. It's much better to talk about what was good from those days.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think there were awful albums from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Like, I don't think there was particularly more from one decade or another. There's a lot of awful things that have come out, and once something becomes successful, everyone jumps on it, and they try to. It tries to become mass produced. They wear the scene out, and then they move to something new, and that's the cyclical nature of the music industry. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thankfully, we're at a era now where nostalgia seems to be the big thing, and all these old albums are getting re-released and re-celebrated with bonus tracks and like all fancy versions with demos and all kinds of stuff. And that didn't happen 20 years ago. They weren't doing that. So it seems to me that you and I are still who the music industry caters the most to. Like, Christ, I spent $600 on music this weekend. So they sure see me coming. And I mean, looking in the background, how many guitars there are. Look at that rack of CDs and your gear.
I know.
Like,
I know.
I mean,
well, music's like, I mean, I've come to accept that music is all I know.
Yes.
I just have to just accept that I'm a musician, and that's okay. I'm.
If someone could teach me about mortgage rates, I'd be very interested. But if not, I'm going to tell you the difference between the 3 days of the new albums, which nobody really cares about.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, mortgage rates would probably save me some money.
Yeah.
I just don't care though.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be great if you were into finance, then yeah, you would have a lot of extra cash, but then you'd have to find a hobby, I guess, aside from unless like not like numbers and finance is your hobby, then. But yeah, it seems a little empty to me. But I mean, hey,
it does.
It's definitely.
I'm comforted by all the record crates in my room that I sleep with every night.
Yeah, fair enough. I
There's
heard
a warmth in my bedroom, that.
I heard a good expression.
There's no other human beings in there, but there's a warmth from those records.
Yeah. Some people make money, and I make music. There you go.
And I work to make money to buy music.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, man. Like even just talking about like the river. I'd love to just sit and listen to the river for like a full day. Just listen to it like on loop, like 4 or 5 times.
I spent so much money this weekend. I had to put down those 2 Bruce Springsteen albums because I have no more money. So.
Oh, you did? Oh man.
Like, it's not like it's gonna be hard to find them, but like I wanted both of them, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to just tide myself over with Bruce's greatest hits. Yeah. But like I said, I love songs about the working man. Like he needs to write a song called The Scaffolder. That's what I think.
The Scaffolder.
Bruce, if you're listening.
Okay, that's great, Jeff. So we have a winner. That's good. And I have a great idea for our next episode, which I'll tell you later.
Shoot,
I won't give it away now. I won't give it away.
Oh, you're going to text me? Okay.
I'm going to text you
we'll keep it a secret.
Yeah, it's a secret. Yeah, like, do you have anything you want to tell us about, like any upcoming events that you want us to know about or anything, or?
Well, nothing. No, just about my impending bankruptcy due to my lavish spending on music.
Okay, so maybe put up a GoFundMe link or something for Jeff. maybe some like
no,
a PayPal
no,
link.
because I'll just buy more music. I'll just. There's way more records I could own.
Okay, Jeff's.
If there's anybody with any Smiths or Cure records that ones that they don't need,
Oh, loving the vinyl, eh? And it has to be vinyl.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
It has to be.
Yeah. I mean, vinyl does sound better. There's no question.
It just looks cooler.
Yeah. Bigger artwork,
Bigger artwork. My eyes aren't so good at 46. I mean, I need glasses now, and I like to be able to see things. I like to see the stitching on the baseball cap in Bruce Springsteen, the ass of his jeans. Yeah. I like to see the stitch marks, and
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with staring at Bruce's butt for that album.
It's such an iconic album cover, and like it's not like Bruce Springsteen is wearing designer jeans. He's wearing Lee's or Wranglers or something shitty like that. Like he just got off that album cover. Looks like Bruce just stepped off a tractor, and they're like, "Bruce, are you ready?" He's like, "Hold on, let me get my cap in my pocket. Go." Yeah. And then they took the picture, and he ran back on the tractor and went hoeing for a bit.
Well, it's totally like one of those things. Like I'm sure people have just like modeled themselves after Bruce's look, right? Like I mean, if you had to pick somebody who is like Mr. America, like I can't think of anyone else that would have that look than Bruce. Like who else sums up like blue collar America than Bruce does? Like just like
Funny enough,
baseball cap and all that stuff.
before before Born in the USA, Bruce had like he firmly established the fact that the E Street Band, it's Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, he's the leader.
Yeah.
Um, it's his band, and everybody does as he says. He said he tried very hard to not be domineering and overbearing, but ultimately the music comes first. So he said, like, when it comes to partying, he says, I didn't get in anybody's business, but if you're partying too hard, I'm gonna have something to say about it.
Yeah.
But he said Born in the USA was the first time when he let people wear whatever they wanted on stage and in the videos and everything. Like, he's like, you know what? It's I he eased off the reins a little bit, and like that's what Bruce wore. He wore regular jeans and cut off t-shirts, and and that wasn't something that a stylist came up with. That was Bruce's own, maybe the American flag in the background, but like that was Bruce's look. And he said it is pretty cringeworthy now, looking back, like how stupid the look was, because he's a big rock star and he could afford nice clothes and stuff, but like he was walking around looking like like I said, he just got off the tractor. And he said the rest of the band as well, like everybody wore whatever the fuck they wanted and they all looked ridiculous. But he said it's just something that the band had to go through. It was the evolution of their look, I guess. And he says he does, even nowadays, he says when he performs, he sees young people in the crowd with Wranglers and cut off shirts, and he thinks it's cute that this is a style or something that people are like a look, they appreciate his look. He said it really wasn't done, it wasn't calculated, nothing about it was calculated. And he's a little embarrassed at how awful the band looked in those days, but he said it was the 80s and that's the way it was, and fashion was just different. And he says it's something I've let go of, and especially the dancing and the dancing in the dark video. When his kids look at it and they're like, Dad, you look retarded. And he's like, I know, but you know what? He was always very hesitant of how he wanted his public persona to, like, how he wanted to be perceived in the press. But what with MTV, this was a new thing that he didn't know anything about. And he said, like, when it comes to an album, you have a year worth of pre-production, recording, mixing, all that shit, and then you can get your ducks in order, the promo pictures and all that. He says with videos, like, you film it for one day, it goes to editing, and then it goes to MTV. Like, there's not a lot of work that gets done on it. Like, and it's kind of a one-shot deal. Like, the label is paying for it. They're paying for one day. It's obscenely expensive. But so he said, I was kind of unfamiliar with the way things went in that domain. He said, I'm much smarter about it now. I actually look forward to music videos, but he's like, in those days, I just did it. I went, they told me to like do a shuffle or dance or look like I'm having fun. And he says, I did the best I could. And he said it wasn't fun shooting a video, but it was a learning curve. And he said it was the biggest video of my life. It propped us up. Like, it really shot Born in the USA into the stratosphere, and they became MTV stars because of it. So he said, I can't really fault it too much. Like, it worked. Much to my chagrin, it worked. So, but also, like, on the flip side, you got Van Halen with all those. David Lee Roth has got like 6 scars, and he's got, a girl's tube top on with some spandex leggings. And Michael Anthony has a Johnny Walker bass guitar. Like, everything was more, like you said, calculating and staged. And I guess maybe Van Halen had I don't know if they had a stylist. They sure looked kind of wild, but
Hmm.
maybe that was just the way David Lee Roth dressed. I mean, I don't know, but Bruce wanted no artifice, and that's also why I think this is a good comparison, because you have slick and stylized and like stripped down bare bones, and opposite sides of the coin. You have two of the biggest albums of the year. What did they sell, by the way, Jimmy?
So I think 1984 was a diamond. Um and then Born in the USA, it says it was 17 million in the States, but then 30 million worldwide. Yeah, it's big record. Made him a megastar.
That's 40 million albums just between those two.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the parallels of Bruce and Van Halen, it's similar too, because Van Halen had early success with their first record, which was Diamond as well. That was a huge seller as well. And Bruce had Born to Run, which is a massive seller too. So, it's kind of like two blips, two massive blips, like one blip in the 70s, one blip in the 80s.